3, 2, 1. Hello, America. How are you? I hope it has been a terrific day for you on this March the 10th of 2022. I come to you today hoping, praying that you're having a wonderful day. And so with that, I'd like to talk to you about the order of the Bible, the books of the Bible. They were there at one point in time, they were in scrolls written on parchment paper. They didn't come in a book, binded in an order the way we have them today. The letters back then were sent out for churches to read and then copy them and then send it on. Copy it and send it on. And that's how the letters got out. Well, they all got eventually destroyed because the Romans and the high priests and the Pharisees, they couldn't have that word getting out. And then the other people destroyed it as well, because that's what you do. When you genocide someone, you get the people with you riled up and hating someone. Sound familiar? It happens just like that all throughout history. So how did they read those letters? They read them from the top to the bottom, all the way through. And then when the Gospels were written in a certain year, they read them from the beginning and to the end. They didn't pick out a piece and here and there. I don't even know if they even quoted them, but they knew what they read and they knew what they meant and they knew the stories. And that's the whole point. Know the stories. And if you can throw out text, bravo, great memory. I can't do that. But let's talk about some stories if you want to. See, if you read them in the way they were written, to who they were written to, and why they were written, then you've got it down. It's very seldom known, but James was the first one written in somewhere around 44 AD to 50 AD. So if you read history, world history, along with the Bibles in an order as they were written, now there's some arguments back and forth, but I got in certain order that I can show you, and it makes a little more sense as you read it. And then by the time you read a certain other books, you're like, yeah, I remember. I got it. Same thing with the Old Testament. Take those prophets and pull them up and read them in Kings. Whenever you're reading Kings and they mention a prophet, pause, read a certain point of it, and a certain point of that prophet may be 60 years, like Isaiah and Jeremiah. They were 60 and 40 years. So as you read that, you come back here and read it in Kings and go, that's what was going on. That's what he was saying. Then you keep reading. Then you're going to get another prophet. And then you're going to get another prophet. And you can read Chronicles at the very end after all the prophets. It's a Chronicles. It's wrapping up everything. That's why it's weird to read Samuel, Kings, and Chronicles all boom, boom, boom. It's 3 big books back together. Take those things and read them in an order that makes sense. It's no sense to read 166 Psalms and whatever, I think 98, ever how many Proverbs they are. They were written in a certain time. So even David, when you're reading about David, go find his Psalms and read some, and you'll know what he was going through. You'll see his vibe, his characteristics, his personality, his soul, if you will. So read those things in a certain order. So that's one thing I like to try to tell people about reading the Bible as they make it out to be. I didn't know it was that easy of a read. Now the old English version makes it almost impossible. And everyone talks about, you've got to read the King James. You got to read the King James. Well, the King James is a version of a king, which is originally a version of William Tyndale, who they killed, burned, and buried at the stake. So I did a video that I'll have to post up here, but I did a video of how we got the Bible from 1100 to 1600 during those years. It was gruesome what these men went through for us to be able to read it. So let's read it. A lot of these men died with them tied around their necks over certain words and certain things about what you don't say about a king or a monarchy. Because, see, they had monarchies back then. If you've got a king or a queen, that's a monarchy, which is what? A democracy. Last time I checked, we don't have but one king. You see how these politicians are trying to turn it to call it a democracy? We are not a democracy. We are a free republic. Constitutional, free republic. We vote in a democratic election, which means almost nothing. By the time you get through all the small elections, they've got the candidates they want, and we have to choose somebody that they've already chosen for us. Those elections are a scam. We need to stop voting R&D, start voting ECC. So anyway, read those Bibles in a certain order. And that's the whole point of that. And you'll see the passion, the love of Christ coming through. Just like the Gospels. Everyone wants to you read those little devotions. What does that, I mean, don't take me wrong. Read them if it does something for you. I'm not to judge anyone, trust me. But what does it do to read a little piece, a sentence of a story? Which is okay if you do. Read a little piece. I just don't like reading pieces, but that's just me. Every time someone throws a devotional up there or a little clip of whatever on the social medias, I roll up about four or five sentences or even half a chapter sometimes to get the whole meaning of it. I'm like, yeah, that's not what they meant. That's all I'm saying. Like Philippians 4:13, one of them. That's my favorite. No, that's not my favorite one. John 3:16 is another one. If you can't tell me John 3:1 through 3:15, don't be telling me 3:16. So Philippians 4:13, I can do all. I don't know the whole thing through God. Whatever. And most people are like, what can you do through God? I can climb mountains. I can, be an astronaut, whatever. And actually, that whole chapter through there is about being content with your money, whether you have a lot or a little. Still love God with all your heart, with all your might, with all your soul, and treat your brother as you would treat yourself. So that means if you don't have any money, don't revert to stealing, because that would be harming your brother. But anyway, that whole thing's about being content. It has nothing to do about overcoming some obstacles or whatever. It's about being content, be happy, be humble, be glorious. And that's the other thing about reading the New Testament. As you read the New Testament in that order, you'll see the glow and the love of God change through these men as the story goes through, especially the Gospels. And it ends up with John. John wrote the last 4 books and letters in the Bible. So he wrote his gospel. He wrote 3 little letters. Well, then he wrote Revelation. So he wrote the last 5. They all came toward the end of his death when he was older, somewhere 90. Some say later in 110 AD, but I don't believe, he'd be really old, especially if he was around in 29 AD. Ever how old he would have been then, a young man, had to have been a teenage boy probably. Or young man, I should say. But so anyway, so the book of John, so you're reading the Gospel of John as a man who's telling his Christian brothers and sisters, continue on, be overcomers. And as you read his letters, it's about love. And I think that's why it's odd to be telling, you can tell them that this is in here, but it really makes you think everything's, just lovey-dovey and whatever, and that's really not the case. You need to read Mark, Matthew, and Luke, before you get to John. That's the Christians. That's who he's talking about. Old Christians, old-timey Christians. He was telling them then, they're like, when's this going to happen? He's been gone almost 80 years now, 70, 80 years. And he's telling them, stay strong. Be patient. It's happening soon. And we have to understand what soon is to our time and God's time. 2 different things. So when we talk about time as relevant, it's different to God. He's outside of time. He's in time here. And that That's in the Bible as well. It talks about, days and years and that type of thing. But anyway, that's all I've got to say on this session, really, is about how to read the Bible in a certain order. Now, what I'm going to do is I will go downstairs in the studio. This is Studio L. So I'll go down in Studio B, and we will shoot the video of what order to read them in and a little overview of each book, just to give you a little synopsis of when they were written. And because I tweak it just a little bit. I mean, it's still in order, but there's argument about the order, and I like the order that I do because it makes Acts explain a lot more. This happens all the time when I start talking, and so anyway. So pardon me for that. We may edit it out. I don't know. I don't care. So anyway, I hope today was great. I hope that you saw somebody today and they saw you and you put a smile on their face and you shared a chapter with them. It's easy to do in almost every conversation. I understand if you don't, but it just be the glow and then they'll know. And so that's what I kind of tell everybody about. As you read through that Bible, you're going to get the glow going through there. You're like, these men changed. These men were scared. They were timid. After the resurrection, they died. They stood up to these men. And you have to know, that's the reason you got to read that world history, Claudius, Nero, and so on. What these men were doing, what they were capable of, and these men were standing up to these emperors and to the synagogues, these leaders that had all this power back then. You could be killed like that. And that's why our Constitution's set up, so governments and politicians and leaders can't just do that to us. During those times, an emperor or a king, queen could walk down the street and whack your head off for no reason. Well, they do it now today and still get away with it in some cases. Isn't that the truth? But typically speaking, we are free from that. What we're doing to each other right now is enough tears to make God flood the earth again. We're killing again. We're just being lied to by these politicians, and there's a better way. And I'm telling you, there's a better way. We've got a blueprint. And the other thing, I want to end with this. I want our preachers who are going to hear this out there, be getting your people ready for what's coming. You think this persecution that's going now is something. I've been saying this since 2018. I know for a fact that this is coming. We are the scapegoat to what's going on in the world, and we're going to be even more of a scapegoat when we start trying to force our freedom. So please, have your people ready, your congregations ready, financially, with food, with reserves, and the ability to come together and help one another out. And then those groups come together and help one another out. That's how communities work. That's how it worked. That's how it worked before the federal government took over in February. In February, excuse me. It's a different subject. In December of 1913. So that's when the federal government took over. And when I say federal, I don't mean like what you think, what we think. It's a different federal government. And so we've been lied to and used and abused ever since. When they have the debates, when the D's and the R's debate, and they're throwing mud at each other, and they're both right. but we still have to pick between these two. There's a better way. I know that for a fact. For me, it took literally an act of Yahweh for me to read a book. And now that I've read through that one, I read it again. And I wanted to read it again. And then I wanted to read it again. And I want to start looking up what Hebrew words. Hebrew's the Old Testament. I wanted to look up Greek words. Greek's the New Testament. Because without that, again, you can go back to the King James Version. That's his version. Congregation is the word that should be in there. And when we say church, not Yahweh's church, not Yeshua's church, they'll build that. Ours is a congregation. The building that we sit in is the building that we sit in and congregate in. It's the congregational building. It's an event hall. The question is how glorious does your event hall have to be? Anyway, so the main point is we're out doing it ourselves, sharing and caring and preaching the word, because that's the whole point. There's no popes. There's a leader in your area. There's a leader at this facility, but no one's a pope. No one's healing. Rephrase. There's healing going on. I apologize for that. That was a faux pas. There's no one taking care of someone's sins. There's no man removing someone's sins. That's not happening. But anyway, so we'll end on that. It's a glorious day. It is literally a glorious day. Tomorrow, have another new day. And you know what I say. You like that? It rhymed. You go have you a glorious new day. Don't do anything today that will screw up your tomorrow. And that's the same thing in our lives or our eternal lives. Don't do anything that'll screw up your eternal life. But that's a day-to-day business. And that's how the Lord, the Spirit of the Lord has just changed me in that one aspect. It's just day by day. Day by day. The seventh day, I rest. First day of the week, I go back to work. Because that day was made for me. Man wasn't made for Sabbath. Sabbath was for man. That's my rest. It's not my salvation. Sometimes I have to. Thank goodness the Lord died for my sin. But Yahweh said, make the seventh day holy and rest. So I do. But Yeshua told me I get to heal. I get to save. I get to preach. I get to eat. And I get to congregate on that seventh day. That's what Yeshua told me when he was walking through the fields and scooping up, the wheat or barley or whatever they were. I remember the kernels. I forgot what it was described. You have to forgive me. But anyway, you know what I'm saying? It's that scene. And everything else I described, he did on the Sabbath. So I'll follow him. I won't follow Constantine. Everyone thinks because in Acts, when they said they broke bread on the first day of the week, that's why we are going to church on Sunday. No, that's what we were told probably, and they try to sell us a bill of goods. But it actually happened in somewhere around 325 when Constantine, the emperor, became a Christian. And he started getting all the preachers together, and they started creating popes and cardinals. And guess what came out of that? Most Christians know this. Most disciples know this. I didn't know this. I didn't have any clue. So that's why I'm sharing it with you. So that's how Catholicism was created out of that. It completely went away from the Bible, regardless of what you're told by the high priests of the Catholics. And again, my disclaimer, I'm not talking about the average worshiping Catholic, the average worshiping Methodist, the average worshiping Baptist. I'm talking about the priest, the organized part above us. If you are in a little private, self-individual church, bravo. If you're not, I would go find one. Nothing wrong with the organization. It just depends on the organization and how many crimes they can hide, which is an odd thing. It's a really odd thing to have something so egregious happening in your organization and no one's revolting against it. It reminds me of right before Christmas, there was a report that came out that McDonald's and all these other fast food restaurants had plastic. They proved it in these articles, and it was in some couple of the major links that you can click on, and no one batted an eye. The lines were still out the door. I thought was odd. I mean, if rumors get out that there's flies or bugs in a restaurant, like, you get those reports about your local channel guy. He comes on and tells you how horrible these restaurants are. Well, people quit going to those restaurants for a little while till they clean their act up. I don't know. You don't have to clean your act up if you don't care to eat a little plastic and a little cardboard. But that's each to their own. So anyway, it has been a terrific day. Tomorrow, give yourself something new. Either knowledge, a little cash, so you can share tomorrow and not waste it all today. God bless you. Thank you, Yahweh. Thank you, Yeshua, for allowing me to do this and be here. And I hope to see you tomorrow, if it's His will. Thank you, and amen.